There are two things that you have not made any mention of in the book. You've written extensively about relationships, about the crises, about managing monetary policy, exchange fluctuations, but you have not shared your thoughts on the build-up of bad loans in that period of time. Nor have you made any mention of how much of that blame the RBI should bear. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, you're right that I've not written about that in the book because I didn't believe that I had an interesting story to tell. But certainly it's an important question. The origin of the problem was during my time. Even from 2011, 2012, 2013, we were talking about growing NPAs.
Right.
Okay. But nobody at that time knew how big the problem was, how big the problem would grow to be, right? Because even as we were talking about it, it was an aggravating problem. There were several causes for this. One of them, of course, pertains to my time during the crisis. We were encouraging banks to restructure loans. And in the process, when we were actively encouraging them to restructure loans, it's quite possible that some of the insolvent accounts were also restructured, not just illiquid accounts. It was either by design or by happenstance. Okay? But that contributed to the NPA problem. But to believe that that alone was responsible for the quantity or the size of the problem, I think would be wrong. But several other factors, infrastructure sector opened up, corporates went into it as uncharted territory for all of us in India. Therefore, people went into it with big commitments. Banks lent to corporates for infrastructure investment. It was uncharted territory for them as well. And there was implementation bottlenecks, delays in permits, licenses, clearances, etc., delays in financial closure. Then there were Supreme Court decisions. So all these factors, I think, contributed to the aggravation of the NPA problem. The reason I did not write about it was because the book had become quite sizable already, and because this is a problem that is actually in progress at this time.
Do you think your monetary policy positions might have aggravated some of these issues?
It's quite possible. It's quite possible with the benefit for hindsight, yes.
When you look back now, what would you have done differently so that maybe you could have moderated the size of the problem of bad loans? You probably could have never wished it all away given the circumstances that you yourself have described. But are there actions that you now think you could have taken then that could have actually put some of this into control, because it's a debilitating problem right now that the economy is facing?
Yeah, some of the things like regulatory forbearance for restructured loans. It was a big debate, it was a continuing debate within the Reserve Bank, and it was on my watch that we decided to withdraw the regulatory forbearance. Okay, so some of those corrective measures were started during my time. So if you push me to answering what could you have done, what we could have done was to be more aggressive in those corrective measures, and more effectively enforce disclosure of stressed assets. All the things that were done subsequently, we could have done in advance.
Okay, I understand. You spoke of some measures that maybe in your term that could have been more effective in reining in bad loans. There has been a lot of debate in the country over the last 5 years on whether a large portion of how we got here in the bad loan problem can be ascribed to crony capitalism, can be ascribed to maybe even corruption within the banking system, the political influence in handing out loans. What would you diagnose as the reasons for why we are where we are, besides the certain infrastructure issues, or let's say some of the Supreme Court judgments that led to, companies having to sort of scrap their licenses, etc. That's only one part of the problem.
Right. No, all this issue of crony capitalism that you call, I don't know how big a problem that is. Okay, I was not privy to it, but I've seen reports about it. I've no public sectors. I've seen reports that some of the public sector banks were pressurized to lend to some corporates. Nobody has come and spoken to me about it.
Either in your time at the Finance Ministry, nor in your time as the Governor of the Reserve Bank of India, you have not seen any political influence in money being handed out,
certainly,
or any
not.
Sort of degree of intervention in how banks decided to give out loans?
No, I don't think so. No, we have not seen it. If there was any pressure, informal pressure like that, it would certainly be brushed under the carpet, right? It's not as if somebody comes and tells the Reserve Bank that, look, I made this loan decision because there was pressure on me.
But you would hear.
You would hear like anybody else.
I'm not asking you for names or instances.
No, but
I'm saying, do you
like
get the impression that a large part of this problem is crony capitalism and corruption?
Well, as much impression as I can get from whatever is floating around in the public domain today, not because of the privileged position that I held as the governor of the RBI.
What do you think of the measures currently being put in place or have been put in place by the RBI to improve disclosures when it comes to loan accounts and to be able to deal with this problem of bad loans, whether it is the CDR, the SDR, now the S4 and all these various acronymed schemes, that seem to be having not that much impact?
Well, I don't know because I've not studied them very carefully, nor am I on the inside track, but I think what the RBI has done is appropriate. They've gone step by step, and this AQR is something that lots of people have asked me about outside the RBI. I live part-time in Singapore. I travel around quite a lot around the world. People have asked me about the impact of this. So evidently, from the feedback that I get, it is having an impact on the impression about the effort of the RBI to clean up the balance sheets of the banks.
Okay. One of the other things that I noticed you did not delve into much deeper in your book is when you refer to the episode with Pranab Mukherjee, then the finance minister, now the president of India, and your desire to seek an extension for Usha Thorat, a deputy governor at that point in time, and he turned that down despite your many requests and despite her credentials, let me put it that way. There have been many reports about why that could potentially have happened. Do you think the finance minister did that to spite you? Or do you think he did that because there was this undercurrent of her actions against the Bank of Rajasthan and all this reportage on how he was not very happy with that?
So it's difficult to pinpoint. And to the extent, it's all by inference, right? It's not as if I had a conversation with President Mukherjee about it in writing the book, okay, or any of his advisors or his officials. But it's my own impression that he was irked by a number of decisions, regulatory decisions taken by Mrs. Thorat. And he was also unhappy with me for my stance on the monetary policy. All this must have come together for him to deny her a reappointment.
You could have written in more detail about the decisions that Ms. Thorat took at that point in time that could have miffed the finance minister.
I did not want to because I would be going into speculation.
How would you be going into speculation?
So if
you
you write
were the
about
governor of the Reserve
specific
Bank of India when she was taking those
I know
actions.
but it's not as if I have concrete evidence to show that specific instances that have irked or irritated Finance Minister Mukherjee at that time. So it would be speculation. So I gave the general impression, which is what my inference was. But if you go to specific details, you need more concrete evidence, right?
What did you think of her actions in the Bank of Rajasthan case? And
no, I don't think I should be discussing a specific instance in an interview like this. It will be unfair both to the Bank of Rajasthan and to Mrs. Thorat.